This morning, I thought it would be great to dig into philosophy. Yeah, the study of the fundamental nature of knowledge, reality, and existence. Maybe throw in a bit of science, a bit of theology, both of which are kind of like philosophy. It's a big subject. Did you feel that? All the air in the room just got sucked out. Actually, I want to narrow it down a bit and introduce you to a guy named Blaise Pascal. Do you know Blaise Pascal? No, not the Blaise Pascal who got nominated for a Juno in 2001. Believe it or not, we have a Canadian Blaise Pascal. She got nominated for her songs Angel Baby, 10 Feet High, and Rush, which I know are probably all on your playlists. So she's not the one. So the Blaise Pascal I want to talk about or introduce is a 17th century French mathematician, physicist, inventor, philosopher, and Catholic writer. He was quite smart. This thing is going to tug out of my... Good grief. There we go. He was a very smart man. And I'm not going to pretend to understand this, but he was really into probability theory. Does anybody know what that is? Anyways, it's a branch of mathematics and statistics, just to kind of give you kind of an idea, concerning events, things that happen or might happen, and the numerical description of how likely or unlikely the event will or will not happen in a certain experiment or whatever. And he was involved in all kinds of mathematical genius-y kind of things. He even invented some kind of calculus to help him with his probability theory. People that invent math, sorry man, I hardly even can do math, let alone invent it. Just too smart. He also invented other things. And one of the coolest things he did, now I want you to take note of this, in 1642, okay, the 17th century, he invented a mechanical calculator. This is in 1642. Did you catch that? A mechanical calculator that actually did adding, subtracting, multiplication, and division, and was used in kind of helping with, what do you call it, economics, not, bookkeeping, all that kind of stuff. Accounting, thank you. He also invented a thing called a syringe. Oh, the calculator, or the calculator was called, get this, the Pascaline. Of course, it's in French, so you have to say it with an accent, but I'm not going to do that. So maybe, Martin, you could say it properly, Pascaline or something, I don't know. Anyways, but he also invented a syringe. Now, I don't know if it was the syringe, but it was some kind of fancy syringe, I guess. He also invented the hydraulic press, and the one thing that everybody is so impressed with, the roulette wheel. Yeah. Which actually makes sense. You'll catch on later. And the reason I tell you all these things is because I want to impress you with how ingenious this guy is. He's brilliant. Blaise Pascal, okay? And when you think of somebody like Pascal, who's very sciencey, geniusy, and all that kind of stuff, you may get the idea that all he ever thinks about are what his main concerns are: facts, knowledge, what you could get from just studying the universe, studying the world, studying things, and all of that knowledge that comes from that. And, well, of course, that was important to him, but it may surprise you that that is not absolutely his priority. Because the roulette wheel The roulette wheel was something that came about because of his associations, which was with gamblers. He would correspond with gamblers and be friends with them. So, I don't know, call him an enabler, I guess, inventing the roulette wheel. But his interests were in understanding how God relates to his creatures and how we, his creatures, relate to God. See, Pascal would, like, a lot of Christians, when they have friends, would invite them to come to church. Of course, they were gamblers, and so they didn't come very often, if ever, I don't know. But, and so in his corresponding with his friends, he would say, well, as a gambler, really, you're gambling with your life here. Isn't God like, something that you would consider? And so he is kind of famous for something, a certain wager, kind of a thing he threw out there to his friends through correspondence. And I don't know how often he mentioned this, but you might be familiar with Pascal's wager, right? So if you don't know what Pascal's wager, I'll try and explain it with a little bit of clarity. It goes like this. If God exists, and you believe in God, you put your faith in him, you trust in him, when you die, you reap infinite reward. If you do not believe in God, you say, that's a bunch of nonsense, but God does exist. When you die, you reap infinite not-so-goodness, right? But on the other hand, if God does not exist, are you following me? And you believe, you say, yeah, well, I believe anyways, and you live your life that way, how much have you really lost? A little bit of things that you might have done. Maybe you would have been a gambler. I don't know. But if God does not exist and you do not believe in him, in the end, it's all good, right? So really, when you think about it, you don't know, right? Let's say you just don't know. What is, when it boils down to it, what is the best bet in the wager? That God exists and that I put my faith in him, because that sort of is the best outcome, really. So he put this out there, but apparently Blaise, his friends, didn't really respond much to that, and I don't know how impressed they were with it. But in the light of it, as we sit here together and we're all sort of somewhat on the same plane, whatever, we would probably in this room say, yeah, God's the best bet. That's the best way to go. Let's put, all in kind of thing, right? But this does not necessarily determine what happens in the real world, does it? And have you ever asked yourself, why? If it's put out like that, why not? How much are you going to lose? Seriously. An hour on a Sunday morning or so, or more. But that's kind of where it all comes down, right? And that, I think, is the biggest argument against Pascal's wager, is that, what are you going to do? Come to church for an hour on Sunday and God's going to be happy? And that's it? Okay, yeah, well, I believe in God, sure. And then you carry on. And actually, I think it was Christopher Hitchens said, that's just horrible. That's the worst kind of argument you could put out there. So he was really kind of hating on Pascal. Because what is God? Is he like some big idiot that, if you just kind of put on airs, he's gonna fall for it? Well, according to the Bible, no. Jeremiah 17, verse 9 to 10, God says this. He says, the heart is deceitful above all things. Who can understand it? Is this thing still working? Oh, now I lost it. I, the Lord, search the heart and examine the mind, to reward each person according to their conduct, according to what their deeds deserve. So according to God himself, God isn't fooled by you trying to trick him, right? God is very aware of whatever kind of deception we can dream up. And it's kind of silly to think that, oh, just because God's the best bet, I'm going to go and jump in on that ring. So it doesn't really work. So the point that Pascal is making with his wager is not that you should necessarily just simply bet on God because he's the best bet. Sort of as an intellectual safety net. That's not going to work because your heart will do what your heart will do. Pascal would say, the heart has its reasons for which reason knows nothing, which is to say, the reason we do what we do often has nothing to do with reason. So the heart then gives us more reasons to not put our faith and our trust in God than our mind can argue with it, if you follow what I'm saying. For example, Pascal's friends, they loved gambling. Gambling was exciting. You know, they'd get together, I don't know, on a Saturday night, and maybe they'd win. Maybe they would break even. Maybe they would lose a ton. But either way, it was like intense, right? They were getting their adrenaline up. And it was fun. It was exciting. And so the heart loves it because that's kind of got a satisfaction of its own. The heart has feelings. And the heart enjoys its passions and the things that it likes. But the heart is not necessarily going to provide you with wisdom. In the Western world, Europe and North America and that, we have been for a very long time well indoctrinated by the idea that knowledge, facts, proof, that science is king. And if we want to know something, if we really want to understand it, then we apply science to that thing and we can begin to understand it. We can draw out, figure it out. That's how come we can understand weather to a degree. It's how we can understand how the tides work and how, biology. That's why we can have medicine and things. Science has provided us with practical things from technology. Technology touches our lives in so many ways with mobility, cars, trains, planes, ships, bicycles, whatever. This is technology providing us with mobility. We can travel all over the world because of it. Technology has allowed us to build incredible buildings, tall skyscrapers, air-conditioned spaces that we can enjoy on a hot day or just get out of the weather, whatever. What about communication? I would say that most of us here have a cell phone with us this morning. And we like to keep up with the newest thing, right? That's why we all have iPhone 27s. I don't. What about medicine? These things that technology has provided has enriched our lives, made it safer, made it a better place for us to live, a more enjoyable place in this world. And science has also enriched our lives by educating us in the knowledge of how our world works, how the universe works, how our bodies work, how the things that we see, how does that happen? How does that work? Science has provided us with this kind of knowledge. We know more stuff today probably than ever at any other time that we know of. The Egyptians kind of beat us when it comes to building pyramids, but as far as knowledge and how things work and how to manipulate the physical world, what has been discovered and invented and that we enjoy, amazing. So science is great, yet God in this world is becoming less and less influential, even rejected as invalid. And so why do I say yet? Why should that be such an amazing thing to you that in spite of all we know, God is becoming less and less important. You see, in my thinking, the deeper and deeper we get into science, like for example, the cell, a living cell, in which your body, I'm not sure, but I think there's like trillions of them in your body. Tiny, you can't even see it. But under the microscope, they've discovered that in the cell, it's as complicated and intricate and busy as a huge city like New York. In the cell. And every one of them's like that. And yet, scientists will insist that this all happened by accident. Certain scientists. And so, despite the fact that we are opening up the world like this and showing the complexity and the wonder and the fine-tuning and the precision of it, God has still said, we don't believe in him. And so, knowledge is not providing a way to God. And yet, I think God is still the best explanation. And God is not welcome. Why? Well, Pascal again, he says, an infinite distance lies between knowledge of God, or just plain understanding, and love of God. No philosophical proof will lead you to love God. You could also say that knowledge in general will not suffice to entice one to know God. This is because humanity is blessed with an abundance of hubris. Humility is not our best trait. And it's remarkable that no matter how down and out a person is, or how little they have to contribute to this universe, or this world, how they believe that they do. I remember when I was a student in college, a long time ago, we were invited by this guy to go downtown in Vancouver to an area known as Skid Row. It was somewhere around Main Street. I'm not sure exactly what the geography was anymore. And we met this woman. Her name was Captain Christine something. She was a Salvation Army officer. And she had a real heart for the street people down on this Skid Row. So she opened up a little coffee house place. And it wasn't much of a place. It was pretty run down. It's probably even smashed down now. But it was good enough. You could go in there if you were on the street. You can get out of the weather, pouring rain in Vancouver and cold. You can go in there, you can hang out, you can drink a cup of coffee and get out of the weather, and you can talk to people. And so we were invited by Christine to come and just be there. And when people come in, just to talk to them. So I remember talking to these people, mostly men. And they would come in, just run down, dirty, bedraggled, really struggling with their lives. And we would sit down and talk. And I was just a young guy, probably, I don't even know if I was 20 yet. Probably 19, 20, somewhere around there. And these guys would come in and sit beside me, and we'd be drinking. I wasn't drinking coffee because I didn't drink coffee at that time, but they would start telling me about how great they are. And they'd be giving me advice on my life and how I should live my life. And I would look at them and go, well, I see it's working out for you. I'll take it under advisement, but maybe not. But even in the midst of that level of darkness, you would think that people would come to their senses and go, this is not working. Maybe there's a better way. God can help me. But no, in this kind of darkness, God did not reach into their hearts. But the intellect, if you will, is not where you reach people. I mean, it can help. But unless the heart is engaged, there's not a chance. You can present all the facts in the world to somebody, but if their heart is not interested, there's not a chance. Stan read this a little while ago, and it says from Romans chapter 10. But what does it say? Paul's quoting from Deuteronomy. What does it say? That is, what does Deuteronomy say? The word is near you. It is in your mouth and in your heart. This is the message concerning faith that we proclaim. If you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you profess your faith and are saved. So faith is a matter of the heart. If you were to wait until you had all the facts together, everything there ready so that you could say yes to God, you would probably be waiting a long time, because there is a lot out there, and there's a lot of arguments, and there's a lot of back and forth, and to sort all that out in your lifetime would take an awful long time, and you may never get there. The fact is, you'd have to be a genius, and I think that is above our capacity. As a matter of fact, God says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." You're never going to get there if you're just going to think your way into heaven. So, what do we do about the heart? What do we do about our own heart, where we are at, when it comes to knowing God and receiving the benefits, the eternal benefits of his offered salvation? In the tragic story of the fall of humanity into sin, into the way that we now experience life in a lot of ways, because no matter where you are, there's struggle. There's always hardship. There's always heartache. It was the heart of Adam and Eve that steered them to sin, not their intellect. You see, they knew what God said. God said this is going to happen. They knew that God created them. They knew that God's pretty smart. They knew that what God says is probably true, and yet, what happened? They believed the lie. They loved the lie. Their heart loved the lie. And then, unfortunately, we all discovered that what they loved was not actually the best thing for us. And the sad thing is, we're kind of loving the same things with our heart in a lot of the way that we live. For most, the desire of our heart is beating away from God. The desire of our heart is beating away from salvation, away from the promised blessings, because the heart is set on what the heart wants. Now, as a counterpoint to this, Jesus came into the world. He came in as a person, not as a scientist, not as a philosopher, not as a great king, but rather Jesus came in as a person who touched people's hearts. And what was his teaching? Matthew chapter 6, verse 19, he says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth." That's really easy to do. Store up things. We want things because these things are going to make me happy. Where moths and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So what was he engaging with? The hearts of people. What is it that you value? Here, let's change that and set your heart on that. Value those things that are really going to matter. So how are we doing in this department? Well, if it makes you feel any better, for me, not always that great. I read a passage like that, and I go, That's tough. That's tough because I have a physical body. I enjoy being warm in the winter. I enjoy being cooled off in the summer. I enjoy driving my car to Kitimat instead of riding my bike or jogging there or riding whatever, a bus. There's not even a bus for me. But, it's hard to give up those things. There's a story, Mark chapter 10, verse 17. I'm going to read it. It says, "As Jesus started on his way, a man ran up to him and fell on his knees before him." A good start. "Good teacher," he said. He asked, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus kind of puts the brakes on. He says, "Why do you call me good?" Just kind of as a challenge to, do you really understand what goodness is and where it comes from? Jesus answered, "No one is good except God alone." And then Jesus, answering the man's question, says, "You know the commandments. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony. You shall not defraud. Honor your father and mother." "Teacher," he declared, "all these things I've kept since I was a boy." Jesus looked at him and loved him. "One thing you lack," he said. "Go sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me." At this, the man's face fell, and he went away sad because he had great wealth. What did he want more? Eternal life or his stuff? So Jesus, in both these passages, has a cure for the heart problem. It was to get rid of the stuff, the thing, that isn't in the way of your heart following God. Not easy. It's not something you can just, "Oh yeah, I'll do that." Whoops. But if you want, there is a way. It's kind of found in the passage because you remember Jesus looked at the man and he loved him. And what Jesus does is he wants to reach in personally and touch your heart. How can he do that? Because he is personal. He is a person. The gospel is called the gospel for a reason, because it removes the guesswork. It removes the gamble, and it offers truth and love in exchange for a lie. The deception, and the indifference. God promised centuries before Jesus came into view, he gave this promise in the book of Ezekiel. "For I will take you out of the nations." Ezekiel was writing during when they were taken away into Babylon, and they were captured there, and they were held there, first of all by Babylon, and then the Medes and Persians. And they also were scattered all over the place. And God here is promising that, and they longed for their homeland. They wanted to go back. And so God is saying, "I will take you out of the nations." And the interesting thing about that word nations, too, is that one of the greatest stumbling blocks, the thing that stole the Israelites' hearts away, was that they wanted to be like the nations around them and worship idols and be a part of all of that. And so God says, "I'm going to take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities and from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone," that thing that makes you resist God. "And I will give you a heart of flesh." You'll be a real person, like the real boy, Pinocchio, right? You'll be a real person with a real heart, one that can connect with God. "I will put my spirit in you and move you to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws."
Then you will live in the land I gave your ancestors. You will be my people, and I will be your God. And so this is God offering the Jewish people that he is going to do the heavy lifting of renewal. And the heart is where the battle is, and that's where God wants to engage you and me. And the heart is you. That is you. So, you and I, we are already living in a way of life that is based not necessarily on what we know, but is based or lived out from our feelings, how we feel, what we want in life. It is driven by our passions, the things that really engage us, like gambling, like cars, like parties, like our friends, like all of those things in life that when we get used to them, we love them so much. And we are living in that way. Maybe not as a Christian here necessarily, but there are things that draw you away from God, things that distract, things that your heart says, ooh, I want to do that. Maybe I'll talk to God later. Maybe I want to, I'm not going to say things because I'll just get all off track. But we begin our lives that way, and then for the most part, we carry on that way. And that is how we live our lives. That is, in fact, the bet. It becomes as simple as this. Are we willing to take a full-on, honest look and say, what is it that my heart, actually wants? What is it that attracts me? Do I, like the rich young ruler, want what God is offering, but I'm not quite ready or willing to let go of what I think is going to satisfy me in my life? It's difficult. We have the things that we know. To trade that for something that's a little less secure in our thinking, not easy. And in your head, we weigh the pros and cons. And when we do weigh the pros and cons, we see that God comes out probably the best bet in the long run. It outweighs, the potential loss. But we are more than just a numbers game. 47 pros, 27 cons, I'm going this way. Not necessarily, That might look better. So we are created in the image of God, which means that we are deeply complex, self-aware, unique individuals. And we have our take on this life. And unfortunately, our take is often at odds with what is true, what is actually right, what actually can fulfill. And so you can see that Pascal's wager is really a view of life. It helps us see the reality of how we live our lives, that life is truly a wager. But Pascal is definitely not saying, believe in God just in case. He is saying, understand your heart. Understand why you do what you do. And then you can say, search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. The interesting thing is that once we have determined that God is the way we want to go, that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, then we must be willing. Sure, we can know it, but if the heart isn't engaged, if we're not willing, it's going nowhere. In Proverbs it says, this is how you deal with your heart. It says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Keep your mouth free of perversity. Keep corrupt talk far from your lips. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or the left. Keep your foot from evil. This then becomes the desire of your heart. Remember what God said. The heart sets the course for your life. Finally, trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and enjoy safe pasture. Take delight in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. And what are the desires of your heart? Take delight in the Lord. What is taking delight in the Lord? Getting the desires of your heart, which is taking delight in the Lord. You see what he's doing there? Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will do this. He will make your righteous reward shine like the dawn, your vindication like the noonday sun. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. And here's where it is. Do not fret when people succeed in their ways. There you are, your heart's looking out. What's going on over there? I want some of that. Where's my piece of the pie? Do not fret when other people succeed in their ways, when they carry out their wicked schemes. What do? When that happens, we love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our strength. And this is where we surpass Pascal's wager and find a rock upon which to build our lives.